I wanted to create a tutorial on a protractor that I want to create. As an example, in the background it's MMWs that he posted in October of 2011. This is in the forums underneath what you've built under your Torchmate. It is comment 1101, or the post in that thread, 1101. Anyway, the one that MMW had posted was really cool. It looks like, I can't see the details of it, but it looks like, at least on the outside edge, it's probably in 2.5 degree increments, maybe 5, I can't tell. Anyway, I wanted to create a protractor without ripping off his idea, and wanted something that was a little bit smaller than this one. This one looks quite large. So going out on the web, I happened to run across, did I put it in there? Nope, I didn't put it in here. I ran across a protractor, if that's what you want to call it, angle finder, whatever, that looks like this. And this actually looked like a good idea to me, fit the bill, and amazingly enough, I've created a tutorial on this already, except when I did it, I don't know, I just didn't like the way it was coming out. It was a very long, hour and a half. I don't think you want to watch it that long, so let's see if I can speed it up this round. Now, these are just examples of things that I've created for this tutorial. However, I'm going to mention kind of a possible problem. This is for a plate marker to mark out on the material. If this was a laser, it'd be a non-issue. However, currently, if you look at this, it's just under 4 inches tall. And if I apply a tool path to this, I think I may already have. I did, yep. If I apply a tool path to this for a plate marker, and then I show the width of that tool path, Alt-N to do that, you'll see that if I zoom in, this is the 0.029 is what Torchmate typically marks on their tool diameter for a plate marker. And at 0.029, when you apply the tool path, this is how close all of these are going to be together. That may look like it's far apart, but you have to realize I'm zoomed in. At actual size, which is probably about there, you can see that those lines actually blend in together. And I think if I were to recreate this at its current size with all of these little marks, it may just all blend together and may not be that useful. So when I go and recreate this, I'm going to do something more like this, where I'm maybe doing the 5 degree increments. And because this center hole between these two pieces is going to have like a knob on it that I can lock down, mostly what I would use this for, I think, is finding an angle that I need, setting that angle, and then transferring that angle to my chop saw, and whatever. As time goes on, I may create multiple iterations of this. I may create a larger one, and if I do create the larger one, let me for instance grab this. Nope. So if I were to create a larger one, just for fun, let's just say we'll double the size to 8 inches. And you were to apply a tool path to this with your plate marker, and then I were to show the tool diameter, you can see that that actually works out much better. They're much further apart. You'll be able to get useful information out of it. So I'm just going to undo a couple of times. So anyway, with that in mind, keeping in mind that I'm going to be building a small version of this, the 4-inch high version of this, I'm going to go ahead and kind of go along this methodology with just fewer marks, degree marks, than what I had out previously. So creating this there's complicated parts and non-complicated parts. The complicated parts is all of this stuff here in the middle. The rest of it's pretty easy. So let's just get started. First thing I want to do for reference, I'm going to go ahead and import that file. And for my sake, I'm just going to leave some of this stuff in here as I've already done it, but I do reference this file from time to time. So the dimensions on this, particularly if you want to go buy it on the web, is all done in millimeters, at least the version that I found. And I'm just going to wing it based on what I want. And I've created multiple revisions of this now. The first time I kind of messed something up, not going to explain it here. Second time I got it correct, sort of. I had to go and correct it in the other tutorial, and that added another 20 minutes. And I figured let's just do it right from the beginning. So the very first thing that I'm going to want to do, I'm just going to take my measurements off of this old one because of multiple corrections that I've made. I just want to get an idea of what size circle I have in here in the middle. I think it's 2 3/4. Yep, 2 3/4. So let's go ahead and create a 2 3/4 inch circle, and I believe this outside one is 4 inches. So let's just go ahead and measure that one real quick. 3.8. Okay, so I did shrink it down a little bit. That's fine. So let's create that. I'm going to create 4 divided by 2, and we'll duplicate that with a Control D and make this one 3.8. And I forgot what that inner one was already. Let me go measure that one again. 2.8. Actually, I believe it was 2 3/4 if I remember correctly when I did the original one, so we'll make it 2 3/4. 2.75 divided by 2. You have to divide it by 2 because this is a radius. This out here is a diameter. So now, and I do have a 1/4 inch circle, so I might as well create that one too while I'm at it. There we go. So I'm going to take all of these objects and I'm going to center them. Alt-K will bring up my alignment menu. I'll center these together, and this is kind of my template. I'm not necessarily going to use all of these circles. They're just, some of them will, most of them will be used. One of them is for more alignment. So this piece right here is actually going to be this inner circle connected to this bar, so if you want to call it that. And then we're going to have an outer circle, which is going to be this one actually. Sorry, it's going to be this one. Well, they're both going to come into play, and I'll show you how. And then with this center circle, we'll use it for alignment purposes, but it'll also be the point at which we put in the the threaded thumb screw or whatever to tighten this down. So the first thing that I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to recreate my measurement marks, all of these marks around this circle. So the first thing I want to do is I want to grab, I could go and recreate these, but I like the length of some of these, so I'm going to just go ahead and borrow them. So I'm going to copy this right here, paste it down here, shift click this, Alt K, and do center, and now I'm going to build an array. So highlight this, layout, array. I like array on arc with rotate on this one. I'm going to be going from 0 to 360 degrees. I'm not worried about the arc radius at this point, and the mark that I have is going to be the 10-degree mark. So 360 divided by 10 is 36. So that gives me my starting mark. Now, what do I want to do with these marks? This mark, remember on the inner circle, I want this mark to be really close to it. So right now it kind of overlaps it. And that's okay. That would be just fine, but I'm going to bump it up just a little bit. Let's make it 1.5. I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and now the next thing we're going to do is get the 5-degree marks. Now the 5-degree marks, because I'm starting off 5 degrees, sorry, let me center this. Okay, so if I were to create a vertical line and start at 0, well, you have to do it this way. Let me just show you why. I'm going to go layout, array, and I'm going to start at the 5-degree mark and end at the 355-degree mark. No, you don't have to do it this way. I lied. Let's do this. So we're going to rotate this -5 degrees because it is 5 degrees. So we have a vertical line. And I'll show you what I was about to show you on the next line, which actually you do have to do it that way. But okay, so without making much sense, just kind of blabbering, let me go back to array. This is our 5-degree mark. There's going to be 72 of them, and we are going to go from 0 to 360. This does create a problem, but I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, so from 0 to 360 we have our marks going around. You can see that. I would like to bring them down closer to alignment to the other marks, so I'm just going to basically eyeball it. 1.44. That's close enough for what I'm doing. Now, when I went ahead and created this, it overlapped little 5-degree marks right here. Now, there is a way around this. Let me show you now. If I let me not do that. Let me rotate this line 5 degrees. And if I say layout, array, and we start at 5 degrees and we end at 355. Now let's do 36 of these. I went ahead and created 36. Let me go ahead and bump those out just a little bit. So now I went ahead and created 36 marks, but I offset them by 5 degrees. Now, if you zoom in, you don't have double lines on all of your 10-degree marks, which this is actually brand new to me. I just thought of it. I mean, I've been doing it a different way before, so that actually works out quite well for me, and hope you guys get a benefit from that and not make the same mistakes that I have. Okay, so the next mark that I want to make is my 22.5 degree mark, which is this one. And there is a problem with this one. I don't want it to be that long, so I'm going to just take this line right here, copy it, Control C. Let me zoom in down here. Control V for paste. V is in victory. I'm going to shorten that line just a little bit. Let's make it 0.175 maybe. And let's see how that compares with these lines. I like that. It's about in between. So highlight this, Control K. Notice I didn't do Alt K. Control K remembers what your last Alt K setting was. Alt K is your alignment tool. So it centered it. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing that I just did a second ago. This is my 22.5 degree mark. So rotate it 22.5 degrees. And well, let me show you what happens if you don't. If you take this point and you try to do an array, and you want to start it at 22.5 degrees and do 360 minus 22.5, and we're going to have 8 of those. You'll notice, let me zoom in, you'll notice that my very first mark is put at 22.5 degrees, but it is put vertical because that's what I started as, and then the next one's put 22.5 degrees later, but it's rotated 22.5 degrees, but it's still 22.5 degrees off, because it should be about 45 at that point. So what we're going to do is let me undo that, Control Z, actually do close, Control Z. We're going to rotate it 22.5 degrees to start, because that's where we're going to start it. Layout, array, right here. Let's get 8 of those. Hit enter, and let's bump the radius out on those. 1.5, a little too much. 4.8. Now if I wanted to sit down and do the math, I could get those exact, but I don't. So okay, so we did that, and we've created our 22.5 degree mark lines. So here's one, for instance. Here's another one. And I think those may come in handy, especially since we're not going to try to squeeze in all of the other 4 degrees in between, well, 3 degrees in between these marks. I think this is a good compromise. Try to include what you can. Now if I were to zoom in, because I paid a little bit of attention to it, these are actually pretty much in line, and I'm not going to worry about trimming them up. But if you did have a bunch of lines, and that was the wrong tool. If you do have a bunch of lines, and I do a layout and array, let's start at 0, go to 360, and let's do 360. Just as an example, if you have all of these lines, let's group them, Control G, and you wanted to trim them down. I had a problem with this last time. Sometimes I do have a problem with it, sometimes I don't. That's why I want to just give you a quick example and not bother with the other one. But if I take this and center them together with my Control K, and I wanted to trim these, you may get a different result than you're expecting. I believe this is going to exhibit the problem that I experienced earlier. If I do an XOR weld on these, and what it did is it trimmed the outside. That worked. So anyway, it trimmed the outside. I expected it to try to trim the inside, honestly, and have a problem. It did trim the outside, which has been working fine for me. So those lines are all even. If they weren't even, they would have been trimmed evenly. That's how I did it on this one originally. However, when I went to trim it on the inside, instead of not trimming the outside and trimming the inside, I could not get any of the weld commands to work. It always wanted to trim it and from on the outside, and that would mess it up. So that's why I took a little extra time to try to line all these up with the tool when I created them, the array tool, and why I didn't try to do it after. So anyway, we've created that. Now this is the next tricky part, and I'll show you how it's done, and then I'm going to kind of give you a few pointers on it. But then I'm not going to do. Well, let me just show you what I'm doing. Okay, so you'll notice I have my text tool. It's got a white bounding box around the T. If I come close to this arc, and click on this, it turns. Well, I don't have to click on it. If I hover over it, it's black, and then I click on it, it'll start following that curve. And what I have aerial selected. My text is 0.125, and my current percent is currently 103.5, which is the distance between them. This might work out. Actually, let me make it explicitly not work out. 115 on my current size, and I'm going to start typing. Okay, let's do that again. Now 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0, 10, 20, oops, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 80, 70, 60. Okay, so you noticed things don't quite line up. If I would have put it on a smaller circle, it would have overlapped and done something funny. What I can do now is I can take this and I'm going to manipulate a little bit. So I'm going to double click in it, Control A, highlight all my text, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on, well, let me show you this. If I were using CAD Lite, this is how I do it. There's another option underneath the full version of CAD. But if I highlight this and do Alt-I, I think that stands for instant replay, you'll notice that I have a fixed text path. So if I double click on that, you have some options up here, which I've explained in another tutorial, so I'm not going to explain them here. But I'm going to put these below, hit apply, and let's give us some distance. And my purpose is to, while I'm using that arc, I'm trying to push my numbers down closer towards these markings. And I like that, so I'm going to hit accept and close that. So that manipulated the text a little bit closer. Now I'm going to manipulate the text even more by coming in here, double clicking on it, Control A, highlight everything, and I'm going to adjust my current percent. And I'm just going to eyeball it because I don't know of another way to do this any better, and get it as close as I can. maybe 1.22. See what that looks like. That looks pretty good to me. And basically we wrapped it all the way around. Now, if you try to manipulate this for some reason, at least on my system, if I try to rotate this, it will not stick. Every single time I've done this, it will not stick. However, if I do a Control B to break it, and then Control G to group it so I can manipulate it all at once, I can rotate it just fine. Don't ask me why, I don't know. However, I want to align this a little more perfectly than I have, so I'm going to do a layout, arrange and distribute, align to baseline. I described this in another tutorial. Basically, I'm going to click point 1 right in the middle of that 0, point 2 right in the middle of that 0. I'm going to say snap to vertical, hit apply, and it rotated it vertical, and that's closer than eyeballing it. So now you're going to notice a problem. My zeros and my 90s are all lined up perfectly. The numbers around the outside edge are not, and that's because, well, I mean, you're dealing with different text. They have different types of spacing. Depending on the text you use, you're going to get totally different results. It'd be nice to find a text, which I haven't tried, to see if it lines up perfectly when you type it, but it's not. So what I have to do, and this is the biggest pain in the butt, and if you know a way around this, let me know, please. I'm going to break this apart. Control B to do that. I'm going to group. You have to basically go and group every single one of these in between, except for the zeros and the 90s. Sorry, the doorbell rang. Lost my train of thought, but I think I was saying except for the zeros and the 90s, which I don't have to manipulate. I'm going to have to go ahead and group every single one of these. And then after you group them, you're going to have to eyeball it and just move them. And then even possibly rotate them a hair. And if you have another circle that's closer, this time when I curved this, I did it on this circle, but usually I have a circle that's about exactly where I want it to be, so that when I have to go and manipulate these, I can butt them right up against the circle. I can get the correct angle, and be on your way. It takes a little while, but you can line them up, and it looks fine. I just wish there was an easier way to align these to these, and I don't know of a way. So to save myself some time, I've already done this right here. I'm going to duplicate this. One trick I've learned is duplicate everything. If you have something that you're manipulating, duplicate it and leave a copy of the original somewhere. So what I'm going to do now is delete all of these, but I'll skip this part in the video so you don't have to sit here and watch me delete all of these. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and just go ahead and center it on here, Control K, and I do want to shrink that down a little bit. I think just get everything a little closer. Oops, deselect that when I do that. Centered again, and that looks pretty good to me. I think I can live with that. Okay, so that's the hard part. Now I'm going to let me highlight all of these. I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to deselect this inner circle and these outer circles. And what I have in here, I'm going to group just all one piece. Alright, so the next step is I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to go ahead and keep this outer circle and center it on this piece. So what I'm doing now is I'm breaking these apart. I'm going to create two pieces. The left piece, which is very simple, and the right piece, which has everything else on it. Just for a check, I need to check something. Okay. So I'm going to center that again. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I don't need this inner circle here anymore, but I am going to group this piece. Control G. I am going to center it on this, and this is going to give us, I'm doing Control Z to undo them. Apparently I didn't grab this piece and put it over here. I'm going to center these together, and for now I'm going to leave this here. It'll make alignment easier after I start adding to this, so I'm going to Control G all of that for now. Actually, Control Z, undo that. No, I just leave it alone. Alright, so Control 1, Control 1, those are my hotkeys for XOR welds, so if I show you the fill now, you can see that I just punched a hole in those. And now these bars, if that's what you want to call them, are about 6 inches long and about 1 inch wide. So I'm going to go ahead and create those real quick. Six by 1. I'm going to round the corners on them. Based on the past, quarter inch radius seems to work well for this. Control D is in duplicate to duplicate it. And now I'll show you how we're going to do this. What I'm going to do is align these things. So select this and Control K and align those. And I'm going to take this and this piece and do a Alt K to bring up this window again. I want to bring them to the bottom and I want to center them. Because I know they're 6 inches long, I need to move them both out away from the center 3 inches. So we'll go ahead and subtract 3 inches in the X position for this one and add 3 inches in the X position for this one. And basically everything's lined up nicely. So what I'm going to do is take the center object now and this one on the left and do a weld, a basic weld on them using my shortcut commands, Control 2 in my case. Now I'm going to take the one in the back and do the same thing. So now I have created two pieces, and we're actually almost done. There's a couple of things that I do want to do. If you go and look at this, they come straight down here, and instead of carving the piece back right like this. So I'd like to do that just because I think it would relieve a little stress from the piece. So what I'll do is I'll just create a box, and unfortunately it doesn't have it, and I've looked a ton for it, but I finally got a hold of the Sign Lab guys and they said that they do not have this option. If I aligned everything to a grid, I could snap to grid. I wish it would snap to the part, but it will not. So what you do is you get it close, and then let's just go ahead and weld these. And then I'm going to manipulate this, transform, round corner. I've already messed up, and I'll show you where it is. The reason why I say that is because I know that I did this the first time. Transform, fill it round corner, 0.25. There we go. And this is my mess up. I'll show you. Okay, so if I were to take this piece, let me group that. And because I don't want to mess it up, I'll duplicate it and throw a piece off here. Again, I would get used to doing that unless you like recreating things over and over and over when you mess them up. So if I were to take this and bring it in here, let's bring this picture over. So we have our inner circle, which is this one, and that's this one right here, and then we have an outer circle. Well, we don't have an outer circle. What we have is we have this little gap in here, and I want that little gap in there so that you aren't, I assume they've put it in for reasons. I can think of situations in which maybe I'd have a weld or something that would be in the way. So I do want that little gap, and I won't, with the way I've currently done things, I will not have that gap, and at least I caught it now, but it's going to make for a longer tutorial. So what I have to do is undo the last few steps that I did. Once I break these apart, I'll be fine, but I need to duplicate this circle, which is actually a slightly smaller radius than this one. When I center it, oops, Alt K, center, you'll see that that's what it is, and that'll actually give me the gap that I need. This was just for a reference for something else. I'm going to break it apart because I do want that 1/4 inch hole in the center. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing. Take these two pieces, weld them. Take this piece and this piece, weld them. I'm going to create another, I'll show you what I'm doing here in a second. I duplicated that. There's actually 2 1/4 inch holes there, and I'm going to select this and XOR weld these, but if I highlight this section, there's still 1 1/4 inch hole there, and I did that because it'll make it easier to align things later when I want to bring in some stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just do some corner rounding and finessing of these corners and things, just try to make it more like that other part. So we're going to zoom in here, and again, the Torchmate CAD or the Scienlabs CAD will not snap to a part. It will snap to grid, but I'm not going to sit here and try to align it to a grid when it's just about as easy to do that. So I'm going to take these 2 pieces, weld those. Oops. Let me highlight those without highlighting. There we go. Weld those. And now I'm going to round this corner just to relieve the pressure, transform, and make it, just nicer looking. Fill it round corner, select it. So that piece is almost done. And now we need to come over here and manipulate this one. Now, when you try to do a fillet round corner on this sharp angle with a straight line in this curve, it's not going to like it. I haven't got it to work out on any of the tutorials, so I'll show you how you work around it. Fillet round corner, let's round that one, and that actually manipulated the curve too, so let's close that without applying it. And what we're going to do is I'm going to manipulate it manually. So take this circle, Control D, see why I need parts. We're going to bring that down here and just use it as a guide. And I could center this, well, let me just do it. I'm going to take this part, break it apart. Now I'm going to take this circle and center it on that, and now we've got a perfect circle. So what I want to do is I'm going to say arrange order to back. I'm going to send that one to the back so I can see it. I'm going to highlight this one and right and left click on a color that, let's do green, I guess, that will show it in the foreground. That's kind of a hard color, isn't it? And what we're going to do is we're going to manually manipulate these a little bit because the fillet round corner isn't playing nice with it. So highlight this, transform, fillet round corner. I'm still going to try to do the fillet round corner, at least on this angle. Hit the wrong one. Transform, fillet round corner. And I manipulated that, but you see it actually tweaked it over here. So I'm going to say apply, close, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this line. And this is plasma, remember, it's not like rocket science or anything like that as far as cutting parts out. So I'm just going to manipulate that node, move it down, and then I'm going to manipulate this line and set up that curve again. And I'm going to manipulate this curve a little bit, and we're close. We're really close there. I mean, I haven't found a way around that. I've had to do that a couple of times now, manipulating that. So now let's go ahead and try to do the same thing to this one. Transform, fill it round corner, and notice I'm only doing one of these corners at a time. Otherwise, if I would have clicked over here and then over here, it might have manipulated the curve over here. So I'm just doing these one at a time. So let's click on that, and that kind of got all shot to pieces. So I'm just going to bring it down here, try to put it about a 45-degree angle from that other node where the curve started. Now I'm going to manipulate this curve back, and there's probably a better way to do this, I just haven't found it. And I'm just going to manipulate this curve and say apply. So basically I did the hard work for it. And I'm going to combine these pieces. In order to combine them, notice they're on two different layers, black and green layers. Highlight them, right and left click on the same layer. Then you can do the XOR or whatever weld operations on it without getting flaky results. Now if I take this and do an Alt-K, center them and line them up on the bottom, then I can manually manipulate this. I'm going to just do this, bring this over. And again, it doesn't snap to parts, so I'm just going to manually bring it in as close as I can, and this is just for visual purposes. I do want a little bit more of a nick if that's what you want to call it in here, so I'm just going to create a little circle. I'm going to just bring it over and eyeball where I think it should go. And this isn't the way I did it before. I do it different every time. So, you know, don't worry about it. Take this. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm just going to undo that. Control Z's. That'll do that. That'll actually be good enough for what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and delete all the extra lines that I don't need. I'm going to take this piece here, group it, and do you remember that I told you I left a one little 1/4 inch hole in here? I'm just going to highlight it, Alt K, do a center, and it centers it on that hole, which I no longer need now, so I'm going to get rid of it. Actually, I do need it. I do have to add one thing. If you'll notice that they added this mark right here, Control B to break it. This mark is your 0 position, so I just want to line that up. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it down here, line it up to that circle, and I'll just bring it up and eyeball it where I want it. This is our 0 position. And I'm going to get actually close to the edge. The closer the better, I think. Now we do not need that hole that's in there. And now I'm going to take this left side and combine it with a Control G. I'm going to take the right side and combine it with a Control G. And now, other than applying tool paths and going and cutting this out, this is what we built. I'm going to call it the adjustable protractor or whatever, or angle finder. You can see my previous versions up here. This one is very much like the one I just built, except it does have a few more problems with the lines. The one I just built is a little bit better for the lines, so I'm going to just go ahead and show you that yes, I built that, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this now, and I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll just go ahead and leave these because I wanted to share these files with you guys so that you don't have to go and recreate these every time if you don't want to. And maybe if you want to look at it, this one, This is one of my original tutorials. I put all the marks on the outside, not thinking very clearly, and when in reality you're measuring it against this line right here on the inside. But I'll leave it on there because there are times where you may want that. And I'll go ahead and leave this one on here. What I'm doing is I'm just breaking these apart, and I'm going to go ahead and maybe put a note on these if I remember where the notes are at. Notes. Okay. This is the final version. Close that. Bring it down here. And I'm just going to do Control S to save that. Just because that's annoying. Yeah, maybe not. Save that again. Okay. In addition to providing you with this file, which may go through a revision in the future, I mean, I haven't cut this out and haven't seen if I have any problems with it or anything, and if I want to manipulate it at all. I'll go ahead and also provide you guys with another protractor that I created. There is a way inside of the CAD software to get angles. I think it's more difficult to do than this particular method. I don't know of another way other than that, what I consider the harder method and this method. So what I'm going to do is just show you why I built this. There are times when I need to know angles, some random angle, and what I'll do is I'll take this protractor and I'll center it on, you know, my point or whatever. And again, it doesn't snap to the object, so you got to manipulate it manually. And you know, that's close enough. And so, you know, obviously this is our 0 mark, this is our 90 degrees, 100, 110, 115, we're just shy of 116 degrees. So this has come in handy for me. I just open it up and import it, you know, copy and paste it or something into my whatever project I may be working on, and use it if I have to. And this has got 22. This also has like 22.5 degree marks on it, the 5 and the single degree marks on it. Anyway, I'll go ahead and provide this for you guys too, so you don't have to go and create it if you don't want to. But I hope that you you know, enjoyed the tutorial. I know it was a long one. Thanks for watching it. If you have any questions or anything, let me know. If you have a better way of doing some of this stuff, you know, let me know. I'm learning it. I'm just making it up as I go along. But there are sometimes better methods than what I'm doing, and I just haven't thought of them yet. So anyway, I appreciate you watching. Thanks.